We are talking about congruent triangles, and we want to talk about the third angle theorem. And that says if two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of a second triangle, then the third angle of the triangles are congruent. So if we're looking at this and it says, we can use the name again. So it says triangle ABC. So A has to be congruent to D. So I'm going to put 2 marks here, and then I'll put 2 marks here. And then it says, because B was number 2 and E is number 2, those also have to be congruent. So we know that this has to be 42 degrees. And then the last one is C. C in F. So here's C and F. Now the statement says, find the values of X and Y. Well, we can find X pretty easily because we know the measure of A is 87 and the measure of D is 5X plus 2, but we know that they are congruent to each other based off of the statement up here. So we can say angle A is congruent to angle D. And so we can say that their measurements are equal. And so 87 is equal to 5X plus 2. And then we can go ahead and solve that. And then we get 85 is equal to 5X. And then we divide by 5. And then we get 17 is equal to X. So that told us what our value of X was equal to. Now we need to find the value of Y. Well, we know 87, we know 42, so we can figure out what that angle is by our triangle sum theorem, which says that they add up to 180 degrees. So 180 is equal to the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B use my blue marker, measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C. So we can add those together, and when we substitute that in, we get 180 is equal to measure of angle A plus measure of angle B plus measure of angle C. So A is 87, B is 42, and C is 3Y. So we can combine like terms. We know that this is going to be equal to 180 degrees, and we know we're still going to be adding, but we want to say 87 plus 42, and 87 plus 42 is 129, and then we still have that 3Y. And then we can subtract 129 from both sides of the equation. And then we get 51 is equal to 3Y. And then we can divide both sides by 3. And we get 17. Then we get 17 is equal to Y. So both X and Y in this case were equal to 17. That will not always be the case, but in this case it was. Next one we have is example 9. That's going to be very similar. Again, we can use the triangle congruency statement to match our correct angles. So it says W is congruent to M. So W is congruent to M. Well, M's 74, so W has to be 74. Then it says X is congruent to N. So X is congruent to N. So here's X, and that's congruent to N. In that case, it doesn't really help us because all we have is a variable, and this one we're not sure right now. And then the last one we have is Y in O. So Y, 1, 2, 3, 4, and O, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure I don't interfere with that minus sign there. So what can we do? Anything? So we know that our 4 marks, so that's 38 and that's 7a minus 4. So we can set those two equal to each other because we know they're congruent. So angle Y is congruent to angle O. And then we can say that their measures are equal. So 38 degrees is equal to 7a minus 4. That's minus 4 there. And what we can do is add 4 to both sides. And then we get 42 is equal to 7a. And we can divide both sides by 7. And then we get 6 is equal to a. So now we just have to figure out what b is. And we can use our triangle sum theorem up here again because we have measurements for all 3 angles, 1, 2, 3. And then we just have to figure out what the value of x is, and then we can use that to figure out b. So again, we're going to use our triangle sum theorem. So 180 is equal to, we're going to add the 3 angles. So measure of angle W plus the measure of angle Y plus the measure of angle X and now we can substitute the values in. So we have 180 degrees is equal to those all added together. So we have 74 degrees for angle W. We have 38 degrees for angle Y. And we have 4b plus 8 for angle X. Now we can combine like terms. So we have 180 is equal to, and then we can say 74, 38 plus 8, and that is going to be equal to 120. So 74 plus 38 plus 8, and that is going to be equal to 120. And then we're still left with the 4b. Now we can subtract 120, subtract 120, and then we get 60 is equal to, and then we still have our 4b there, and divide both sides by 4, and then we get 15 is equal to b. And then we have one last example to go through. and it's going to be the same idea. Again, we can use the name to match up the angles that are corresponding and congruent. So H and T. So put 2 here for H, and let's put 2 here for T, and then J and R. And if R is 83, then that also means that J has to be 83. And K and S. So we can look and see what we know. And right here we see that H is congruent to angle T, so we can figure out what the value of A is. So we know that angle H is congruent to angle T. So 51 degrees is equal to 6A minus 3. And then we can add 3 to both sides of the equation. And then we get 54 is equal to 6A. And then we can divide by 6 and divide by 6. And then we get 9 is equal to A. And then we can figure out B. So we know the measurement, have an equation that represents, or expression that represents the measurement. So we can add those together with triangle sum theorem, and we can figure out what that is. So we'll write it out again. We have 180 degrees is equal to, and we're going to add 3 angles. So the measure of angle H plus the measure of angle J plus the measure of angle K. And then we can substitute those values in. Again, we're going to add 3 angles. So the value of H is 51 degrees. The value of the value of J is 83 degrees. And the value of K is 7B minus 10. Next, we can combine like terms. So 51 plus 83 minus 10, and that is going to give us 124. We still have the 80 over here, and then we still have the plus 7b. Next, we want to subtract 124 from both sides. And then we get 56 degrees. And that is equal to 7b. And then we want to divide both sides by 7. And then we get 8 is equal to b.